What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Fab, Freddie Fox, America's Big Brother, and we back with Saturday Night Sit Down. And tonight, I got a good friend of mine, financial advisor, Guelory Brutus. What's going on, my man?
Freddie, what's going on?
Yeah, we finally making it happen. We finally making it happen, right?
Man, finally, yes. I'm actually really excited to be here with you, and so glad we could make it happen.
No, absolutely, man. So I met you a couple months ago, right? It was at Brandon Guedors's A to B conference, right? That's where we first talked and got to know each other, right?
That's right. That was the first interaction at the A to B conference, and you approached me, and it was pretty cool because when you told me a little bit about who you are and what you did, and I was like, bro, we gotta make it happen. And 3 months later?
yeah. It's been a complicated schedule, man, but we finally got here. We finally get it going on, and we're a little bit pressed for time, so I really want to get into it with you, man.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
As I tell everybody to kind of breaking into the whole concept of my shows, like I sit down with different people, right? Because we know in our community, right? The dads have kind of like a bad rap, right? They're either not there, they either leave, they're in jail, one thing or another, stuff like that. So, it's really impactful, right? And I want to really let the guys know how important it is as a dad, right, to be there for your kids, right? Like, everybody thinks like, being a dad may be really, really complicated. It's not. It's very, very simple. I'm gonna give it to you right now.
Yeah.
Show up.
Yeah.
Show up, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, first off, I love what you're doing, especially talking about fathers. It's kind of crazy, but we'll get into it. This couldn't have any bit more special for me because my dad, man, he's my rock. So I've been fortunate enough to have had my dad my whole life. And I could say that I didn't realize back then what he was doing before in regards, how it could be with especially black fathers. They don't express themselves, express any emotions anyway. But, they're always there. They try their best as much as they have a bad rep in the community. But then those that do show up, when they show up, they show up. So, yeah, it's very significant to witness as a son, but now also me as well, looking and becoming a parent in the future. It's going to force me a lot to take a lot of these characteristic traits and apply some of the things I've learned from him and just the men around me,
Awesome, man. So like I asked everybody, my very, very first question to you, right? Thinking about like you just hit on a characteristic. So for you, what do you think are some of the key characteristics it takes to be a good man or a good person?
Well, thinking of what my dad would say, what I would consider that make a man's great characteristic is the first thing on mine is leadership. And I think for a lot of us that either grew up with a father or did not have a father, we still wanted to have a presence of leadership in our lives. And leadership is really to be able to help guide us in the ways of how we live. But then also the examples of how a man should be protecting his family, and it's funny because I just watched a movie yesterday called Beast with Idris.
I want to see that movie.
Oh my God, I'm not gonna ruin it for you, but there's such a presence of the nature of being able to protect one's pride, right? And when you think about father figures and how they've been able to protect their pride, and those of which that have failed, how that impact really tremendously having a family. And so a father and a man, and their characteristic traits is leadership, integrity, and honesty, and the ability to showcase to their family being that protector, and have that sense of provider as well. And I think those main things are really what the true characteristics of what makes a man.
It's why I really love doing this show, man.
Yeah.
I start to watch other people, right? It helps me trigger things and make me think, about things that happen to me and realize certain stuff, right?
Right.
And when you said like leadership, right? And I was thinking about my dad, and nothing against my dad, right? But he never really gave me the presence of a leader. He was always more of a one-man person, right? Like it wasn't more a sense of like trying to lead an army, stuff like that. Like my mom was more of the leader of the household, right? She's the one that ran things and kind of said everything. My dad was the authoritarian, you know what I mean? Like she threatened with my dad, but I knew I had a lot softer with my dad. Like my dad would really like kind of give me mostly what I wanted, right? But he didn't really show me like that leadership characteristics. Yeah. But the other part that you said, right? Like the movie and protector, right? That was huge, right? And I seen that on different occasions. Like my dad don't mess with his family, right? That doesn't play that. Like there was, three quick inches, and I showed the story millions of times. But there was a time that I showed up at his job, and his boss didn't know that I was his son. He referred me to a nigger as a nigger,
Oh wow.
and my dad went off, quit that same day, nearly killed that man. Like I think he only didn't kill him because he didn't want me to see him go to jail. Like that, you know what I mean? But he went into protector mode in a way that I've never seen before.
Wow.
And that like imprinted in my brain, right? Wow. There was another time where I got into a fight with one of my neighborhood kids. Right? You know how we was growing up. We fight all the time. We fought a bunch of. Right. He was Haitian. I don't know if you know. Do you know the Florimond family? Jeff D. Florimond, Getro.
The last name sounds familiar.
They grew up on the west side, right? Great, love their family, man. Like I said, but me and Jeff D. growing up, we was like that. We would fight all the time, right? Like so, one day we had like 3 or 4 fights, right? And and then when he went home and he bought the whole, like, I mean, these Haitians ran deep to my house, bro. I mean, they literally lined up around the whole. I never seen so many there again. That's a big family over there. But when I said that, I was like, you know what? I went out there all bold, level-headed, and I'm like, I said, then they all scattered north running, and I thought I was like all big and bad and bold, but lo and behold, I turned around, my dad was standing in the doorway with a machete. He didn't even say a word, you know what I mean? Right, he was in the doorway with a machete, and I was like, wow. You know? So no word said he was about protecting his family, and that's how I am about mine. Like when if we gain that loyalty, I consider you my family. I will protect you too. I'll do whatever I can for you. Like my motto to my in-laws, they always tell me how grateful they are I am for taking care of my wife and all that stuff, and they but I always tell them for family, anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything for family.
Yeah, no, and that's a great example that you brought up, right? So when you think about protecting one's pride as characteristic for a man and how a father figure should be there to protect his family. And, a lot of what we're supposed to do is serve, right? As men. And one of our acts of service is to protecting. And you see that a lot. And those that do show the ways in which they actually are protecting their family is by being that provider and, but one thing I noticed, I don't know if you've noticed that too, what you mentioned earlier, authoritarian, and shout out to the moms as well that plays the roles of the fathers, right? And there's a lot of that in the communities that we're from, where the women have to take on those leaderships and being a father figure. And as much as I can say I've been grateful, lucky to have both of my parents in my lives, but they've been at my lives at separate instances, right? So, for example, when I was in Haiti, until the age of 7, my dad moved here to the United States so that he could help us get a better life. However, that means that he wasn't really there for my teenage years, right? So it was my mom that was basically there. And he didn't necessarily go out of communication. We were in communications with one another. However, the presence of the male figure in the house as him being that figure for us wasn't there. Right. And it's interesting because I have some form of understanding because of this, not to the full extent that one does as somebody that did not have a father growing up, but really to the person that, had not always seen a male figure being that father for him. And so, I say all this to say as I have so much love and respect for my dad, and that put a riffle in our relationship. Because when I came here, I was a teenager in my early 14s. So for 7 years, him not physically being there all the time had impacted how I had gotten closer to him, and certain expectations that he had when I first moved to the States, and certain things he would want me to do and ask me to do, I would not respond so well because I was just like, well, my mom would do it differently. My mom would have showed me differently. So those dynamics always interest me. And thinking back to what you said earlier, I think a lot of it, when you recognize the differences and how one can always learn from others and the ability to understand what the true characteristic is afterwards, you really learn a lot into shaping your own as a man.
Yeah, and I want to take a moment too, right? Because I know we say that kind of like a bad rap, but I want to give a shout out to like those dads, because a lot of guys, for me as a dad, right? Like, I know, like I want to be there for my kids 24/7 all the time. Like I don't want them to be without me, whatever, So the thought, like right now I had to travel for work, right? I got like once a week for a month, and in my mind I'm like, wait, once a week for a month, like I'll be away from I can't I can't fathom that, you know what I mean? Like it's just a week to leave your home country, right? To go to somewhere brand new where you know nothing, barely probably speak the language and all that stuff. You got nothing but the clothes in your back and change in your pocket. To be away from you, to try to pave them a path. That is difficult, because I'm sure on his side too, like, wanting to be a parent, and wanting to be there, but it's like, either I'm there, being a dad and showing them how to be disciplined, or I'm here helping provide them for a better life so they don't have to live in the same conditions that I had to.
Yes, yes. I love that you brought that up. Oh my God. So I was just listening maybe like 2 weeks ago to a short by TD Jakes on YouTube. It was a YouTube short. And I think it's even in the Bible somewhere, but it goes in the line of, in the expectancy to have a father figure when he's providing, and then versus when he is present. You can't expect the dad to be there all the time if he's gonna be a provider, right?
I forgot that was TD Jakes, but I know exactly. I was telling my wife that the other day how I felt that.
It was TD Jakes,
and he's right. It's so powerful. I told her that too, like, because I was going through that, and I'm busy, man, right? You know what I mean? Like I said, I work 9 to 5. I got my podcast. I got my t-shirt business. I'm trying to be a full-time dad. I'm trying to do all these things. And sometimes, you know what I mean, like in different activities, it may pull me away from the family, you know? So I was telling her that too, just like TD Take says, like, it can never be 100. Either you have me and we don't have the money. We have the money or we don't have the time, but I can never give you 100 because I got to be, you know what I mean? And it's so hard to pull yourself. So like that too, like, I mean, now that I'm a parent and I've the thought and having to be away from my family for like a week, to be away for months and years on end, with not, again, you're leaving your family, what you built, right, to be alone, to purposely be alone, to build. It's a crazy thing to do. That takes a lot of balls.
It does. Well, you know, I told you earlier in the beginning how this moment right here is special for me as well, to be able to have this conversation, because, you know, it's kind of ridiculous, but just last week, man, my dad almost passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. So I probably won't get too much into the details right here, but
understand.
you know, it was a pretty surreal moment for me just to experience that, because it was something that really shocked the family. And so in a manner where you know, something that just happened so quickly, I'm super grateful, you know, for being able to see him again. It's just so many you know, things that you go back to and you like, oh my God. So the moments that you get to cherish now, you really amplify those, right? Now you really go ahead and build those memories, or create those new ones, knowing the sacrifices that were done along the way. And, you know, you mentioned how your family and not being able to be there, you can't even fathom that. I mean, I don't have any families built just yet, but being able to experience that with my parents. But, you know, I'm also a godfather. And so there I have 2 godchildren. One's here, one's in Haiti. And the one that's here has an older sister, and they always see me, and I always stop by because they look closer and whatnot. And I started to see them develop some attachment, right? And there was sometimes I'm busy, like I haven't been able to really go there and actually see them. And so when I really just saw them recently, they were just so sad that I was leaving, and I was there for over an hour. But it's been so long that I hadn't seen them, and just that fact that we were all gathered together, even though in my head I'm like, oh yeah, I just spent an hour, because that hour is what I knew I could have been able to give, knowing that day. But then, you know, they're not necessarily my kids, but as a godparent, you're looking at it where you also supposed to be looking after those children in some way by being examples in their lives, right? So seeing that little attachment, I was like, man, I realized I got to spend more time. But yeah, right. So how do you still create the time and provide and protect, right? So kudos to all the fathers that's doing it, man.
That's what we're trying to figure out, man. You know, and like what you're saying that about your goddaughters and stuff like that, kind of like what we said earlier, right? Just show up. Right?
Yeah.
So I do, just show up and be there. And it's funny how you said that, because like with me, I say this all the time. the moment I knew that I wanted to be a father,
Mm-hmm.
I was 13 years old.
Wow.
It was June 9th. My niece was born. My first niece was born.
Wow.
Naina Lee. And I remember going to the hospital and holding her for the first time. And at 13 years old, I understood that that was unconditional love. She's so new to this world, doesn't know me or anything in it
Mm.
whatsoever.
Right.
But we bond. We love each
Right.
other. You
Right.
know what I mean? Like, and there's nothing like whether I'm goofy. She doesn't know
Yeah.
me for anything else. Like, right? You know what I mean? Like, I can
Right.
have
Right.
crazy
Right.
here. Like, I'm
She's young.
completely normal, right? And that'll become her norm.
Mm-hmm.
That's unconditional. But I was 13 years old, holding her, looking at her in her eyes for the first time. I was like, I need to be a dad.
Yeah.
You know, and what you're going on with, like I said, with your nieces and stuff like that, and being there, like you said, you charged it up, and like I said,
Yeah.
close and going there. What I've noticed a lot, right, through a lot of the guys who had separation issues with their dads, or their dads weren't there, overcompensate with their kids.
Yeah.
Or the people who are going to be there, they're constantly there. They're constantly
Right.
doing something. Oh, we are annoying because they know what it's like not to be there.
Yeah, and that's another thing, you know, that you brought up that's significant, right? So now part of the generation that's growing up and seeing that, and also the previous generations, and just kind of learning from our parents what they did and what they didn't do, and they tried their best. But now knowing how you yourself trying to navigate your own family because of either past wounds you had, and you're trying to heal, and you trying to make sure that your kids grow up with what you didn't have, or learn the skills that you didn't get a chance that your father to really share with you. And you know, it's something to always be mindful of. And because of it, I am also allowing myself to experience all the things that I get to see from little nephews or nieces or cousins, or even my uncles, man. One of my uncles is probably one of the biggest inspiration to me, and he's like another father figure here. And to see how much this man continues to elevate and show up for his children. But it's interesting because he has a bigger family, and you can see the older ones that didn't get a chance, like you were bringing up, to really experience his presence, versus the younger ones who do. There's a different dynamic,
Right.
and so there's that little bit of overcompensation that goes on in the family. However, you see him still showing up, and you see him still being present, and so the qualities of a man that are consistently showing up in the manners that actually impact the children that they're raising is really what helps create those characteristic traits we were talking about earlier. And somebody, in the case of my uncle, is someone that I get to learn a lot from, and I'm grateful for him as well.
Now, your uncle, like, was he during the 7 years your dad wasn't around? Was he around there in Haiti, or was he here?
No,
Like,
he was also here.
He was a
He was
hero.
also here. So you know, the time that my dad and I got a chance to really experience each other's presence in our lives was when I came here, of course. So, but then it was like a bonus. Now I had multiple father figures.
Yeah.
So it's funny how life works, but I mean that's one of those things. I have a quick question for you too.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
So now, have you been able to, as a father, because you know I'm a youngin, just coming up, and I've, like I said, I've yet to have any children, but I can see myself becoming a girl dad and really much having more girls. And so I see from you all the time, you talk a lot about how your daughter, you love her so much, she means the world to you. What does it really even feel like to be a dad?
Man, it's very, very indescribable, man. Like, it's a surreal feeling, because even sometimes when I look at her and I hear her calling me dad, and it's just like, I'm really a dad. Like, this is insane. Like, I have a kid. Um, and I think maybe it's breaking, I guess, into the psychology of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, my wife got me a gift when my daughter was born, right? It was a plaque that it was made, and it says, "A father is his daughter's first love,"
Denzel Washington.
right? And and I think a lot of it goes into play because, number one, right, growing up, I was like a mama's boy, right? You know what I mean? Like, my dad was around, but I think we all kind of do that. We tend to our moms,
Yeah.
and just feel my mom was there, so I was very, very attached to my mom. I have a very, very great relationship with my mom, and then I think it also plays into when I went out into the world and tried to look for love from, like, I mean, the opposite sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being constantly rejected and hurt and all these things, and you're feeling this pain and stuff, and you just want to be loved, right? You just want
Mm-hmm.
unconditional love.
Right.
And that's what it is. I said, since I got from my niece when I seen her the first time, where, what I mean, like, I know that she loves me for me. Like, I can make
Right.
any mistake. I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to put on a
Yeah.
facade. I don't have to act like anything else. I can just be and
Mm-hmm.
be loved. And that's like peace. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what it is when you have your kids. Like, I think that's probably when you come to it, is that they're your center of ultimate peace, because around your kids, you can do and be whoever you want,
Mm-hmm.
and as long as they're considered with them and they just love you, you know what I mean? Like, I can be silly with my daughter and I'm goofy and I'll tease her and I'll, I mean? I can just be whatever I want,
Right.
and I don't have to worry about it. Like, it's just
Right.
fun,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I think also part of it too is that, when I think also, like, for me in my instance with my daughter, is that, and I've seen it with my nieces, is that with the whole dad thing, I noticed that, the father and daddy issue types thing. So with my daughter, you just want to protect her, right? Like, you see in the world, you do all those things, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of like the princess is the ultimate kind of protector of the fragile thing, right?
Yeah.
You want to teach her and show her everything to look for in a man, because as we know, unfortunately, right, like, we're not going to be here forever. We
Right.
want to make sure
Right.
that she's in the good hands, right? So how do you
Absolutely.
do that? You need to be the example
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
show her what to look for, right?
Right.
And on the other side of that angle with my son, I need to show him how to be that man,
Right.
right? How to be those steps, how to prepare yourself to
Mm-hmm.
take that role and do all those things, because it's kind of like going back to like the whole dad thing, right? I'm kind of touching these things in, because one of my things that I've learned from my dad, right, just by his actions, is that when him and my mom got into arguments or whatever happened,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? The very next morning, he still made her coffee. He still cleaned her car. He still took all the things. He might not have looked at her, talked to her, said anything. He might have been so angry at her, but never changed his love for her.
Mm.
You get what I'm saying?
Right.
And not to get out, like, every relationship, like, with my wife, we had a little spat this weekend. You know what I mean? Nothing major and stuff, but I was a little irritated. And next day, same thing. I went in, made her breakfast, same thing, made her breakfast, made her sandwich, stuff like that. Next morning, she was like, I know you're upset. We had to see, but I appreciate you making the sandwich. And I was like, just because I'm upset, it's not going to change how I take care of you.
Wow.
I'm always going to take care of you,
Wow.
no matter
Wow.
what.
I want to dive into that, and maybe I'll take a quick snap at this. But what you just described was the behaviors of love,
Mm-hmm.
right? So going back to the characteristic traits that a man should have and what really defines a man, those actions matter, right? And so thinking about that in regards to how you mentioned being a mama's boy and how you were raised and all that, I can relate in that aspect of my mom really is the one that raised me during my teenage years. And that's something I noticed as well. They would argue quite a lot, and certain things that would happen that would bring them arguments. I mean, they always showed up for each other the next day, right? And whether or not being the only child had something to do with it, but I think when you get to see that no matter what the argument may be or whatever the case may be, the idea of always taking care of her was never, an issue. And so I think that those behaviors and those actions is quite intriguing. And for us, man, I mean, I don't believe there's anything more powerful than a parent's presence in a kid's life.
Yeah, and like, I didn't realize that, seeing and I'm in that mentality. Like, I guess seeing those things could either make or break you, right? Like, I grew up seeing my parents. They got some physical fights.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, it got pretty ugly. But like I said, at the end of the day, they still, you know what I mean? Like, even if it was like huffing and puffing and stuff like that, like, I make you your coffee, here's your food. I made you some chicken and some, you know what I mean? Like, but you still took care of them, right?
Right.
And my dad told me that too, right? He told me, like, when with my mom's mom, right? He told her that he promised her that I'm always gonna protect your daughter.
Right.
And I'm never gonna break that promise. That's what he told me. So I'm never gonna break that promise. I don't care what happens. I'm never gonna break that promise. And you see these things, these couples, and they talk about, like, oh, what is the secret of the longevity and you guys being married 60, 70 years or whatever. And one of the key answers was just like, we come from a time where we would fix something that was broken instead of throwing it away.
Mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And one of the things I told my wife from the get, like I would sit here and I told my when we were dating and everything, like I said, listen, I will fight for this relationship for to the day I die, right? I will fight for this relationship. But the moment like you decide you don't want to fight no more, just let me know. I'm not gonna fight for somebody who don't want to be here. You know what I mean? Like I'm fighting to stay together, not fighting to stay apart. You know what I mean? Like whatever we argue about, so it's never about like me going to sit like, you know, how we gonna fix this, right? Because it's never my thought like, oh, this is the end. Like it doesn't cross my mind.
Right.
And somebody else has said another thing when it comes to love too. It's like you ask a man like, you know, why do you love me? As the answer says, because I choose to. Right?
Yeah.
And then it got me thinking of like, I know it's kind of like these things like a joke and stuff. I play at it, but it's highly, highly true, which is, like it says, there's humor in things that are true, right?
Right.
And they say like, oh, girls, you know, have sex with who they want to, right? But boys have sex with who they can, right?
Yeah.
But men marry who they want to. Women marry who they can.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's true, ladies out there, and it's kind of sidebar and stuff like that. When a guy wants you, he wants you, right? There's nothing that there's gonna come in his way. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't matter. No hell or high water is ever gonna come in between that. You know what I mean? Like they will fight for you for the death that they really want you, right? So just know that and hold true to that. And that's what I want to show my daughter too, right? Like I say that with her. You know, I wanted to show that, right? Like I'm never want to have raise arguments or anything like that. We talk about it aside, don't show this to our kids, but it's never gonna change that I love you.
Right.
I love you good, bad, all in all. Like I don't pick and choose what I love about you.
Absolutely.
That's not unconditional love. That's not what I'm about.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I love you regardless. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's how we kind of go.
Yeah. No, it's crazy. We have so much that we could be talking about forever here, but you know, I think what you're really talking about also is an aspect of commitment, right? Commitment, and so when you, as a man, make a choice to love your spouse, your woman, or your significant other, and it is a commitment that you're making, especially with the bond of marriage. So, you know, whether or not we talk about need of being married to make a commitment and the presence of that relationship dynamic in regards to the church or whatever, but at the end of the day, choosing to be with someone and committing to choose to being with someone is really something, right?
That's true, right? Like it says, like I choose you. I choose to wake you every other day, not because I'm forced to, not because there's a gun to my head, not because anything. I want to wake up every day. I'm making it a personal decision, right? It's not a mistake, and that takes a lot to make something. You know what I mean? Like that type of commitment to go through that, man. So, nice. I mean, I know I love this. I love these things that we can go on. I mean, it sucks that we kind of caught in here because I know we got a little pressure of time. No. So we're definitely going to do a little bit. We're going to talk more.
Yeah, we definitely got a lot more to talk about. Anyway.
I got 2 last questions for you before we go, right? Because I always do this, right? So number 1, out of everything that you've been through and all your experience in life so far, right? What do you think has been the best piece of advice you received so far?
Ooh, let me see. I'm gonna give this one shout out to my dad. That actually started, and it's crazy, but when I was 3 years old, he would teach me Spanish. He would teach me Spanish, and he was a professor in Spanish. But something that I can actually say till this day resonates with me. He used to tell me, so si tu quieres octubre, prepara noviembre. Really, if you want, basically, if you want to flourish in October, you got to prepare beforehand. It's awesome. It's awesome. So that's one of the biggest piece of advice, and that idea of having to prepare ahead and plan ahead and having to cultivate, you know, your fruits. And so,
and you know what? Like your dad lived that through and through because he left, right? Go do something big for you guys, right? He left to prepare something big for you guys in the future. So that wasn't just a saying one time thing. That was his life motto, man.
You just made me realize
that was his life motto, buddy.
Damn.
You know what I mean? Like I need to plant what I need to do for my family's success, but I gotta do what I gotta do now for them to be good later. So thank you, Pops, for that one.
Look at that, dude. This is why we gotta do another one. You just made me realize something. That's huge.
So lastly, right, as we wrap this up, man, you know, thinking about everything, all your experiences, right, and you got that best piece of advice. As you can look at the younger generation, these kids coming up that are going through or maybe struggling stuff. What is one piece of advice you would want them to have?
The younger generations, it's something in which I'm going through right now, given that I'm seeing other people that I look up to have also, whenever they've been in their journeys, to show up for themselves in a manner where, when things really get hard, when your back's against the
Mhm.
wall, that's when you go harder,
Yeah.
right? And so for the young people out there that are probably going in different chapters of their journey and maybe going through certain difficulties, whether or not it's a relationship with their parents and their relationships with their loved ones and what they're trying to do in life, whatever that challenge may be that they're trying to overcome, there's light at the end of the tunnel for them. So going harder doesn't necessarily mean having to go bang your head against the wall, but meaning take a step back sometimes and look at everything else that's happening around you and amplify the right action steps you need so that you can actually achieve what you want out of your life. So that's really something I live the younger generation because as you continue to grow, as you continue to elevate, each chapter has its own season, and each season will keep showing you the different things you got to keep going through. And every time you're elevating yourself, you're going to need to become a person completely different than the one before because growth doesn't really leave any noise. It's uncomfortable, but it really demonstrates itself as you get along. So, yeah, and it's really the biggest thing
No,
I'd
no,
say
it's
for
dope,
you.
man. I appreciate it. Like as you said that, something came to mind and made me think of something as we wrap it up. I'm gonna wrap it up with a I guess a little riddle, right? A
Yeah, yeah.
joke for you. What is the most dangerous animal in the world?
A lion.
No. You ready for this?
Talk
The
to me.
most dangerous animal in the world is one whose back is against the wall.
Wow.
Because they will be willing to do anything they need to do to survive. So remember that. One whose back is against the wall. So, I mean, we got to do this more, man. I wish we could talk about more. I appreciate you. We're going to wrap this up, man. So,
Absolutely,
thank you so
brother.
much for joining me. And everybody, as I always say out there, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, your big brother loves you. Stay blessed, everyone.
Yes, sir.